very humbled by this win. I want to thank my wife and all of my family. We also beat the Republican Party today in Alabama. And I'm sure that I want to say that I'm not reflecting upon Lieutenant Governor George McMillan. I would have been glad to have gotten any vote that wanted to vote for me, whether they're Republican or not. Therefore, I'm not criticizing him at all. I'm sure that I would have accepted them had they wanted to give them to me. But I want to tell you that they went in the primary today with express purpose of voting Republican in November and voting against George Wallace because they did not want him as an opponent. But I want to tell the special interest in Alabama, the special moneyed interest crowd in this state who tries to run politics, but they can't run it when Governor Wallace is a governor.
The concern in Tuscaloosa this week doesn't necessarily surround Saturday's opponent, Arkansas State. Instead, Coach Bear Bryant is worried about Alabama. After last week's close call with Vanderbilt, Bryant says all the talk of best team ever in national championships was a bit too premature.
It's traditional around here to talk about championships, and I've talked about it, you've talked about it, everyone's talked about it, players talk about it, but we don't act like we want to win a championship.
We didn't play well last Saturday, and that's what he's referring to, and hopefully this Saturday we'll put it together and play a whole game instead of a half a game.
From what I see, I think that we have the championship material. We just have to bring that potential out in practice and in the games, and I think that we could do a fine job this year.
I think we got enough people on our team that cares, but we can overcome. If everybody pulls together, we can overcome that and do well. Be good.
But this week in our schedule was a week we should have been preparing to be a real football team, and we've gotten very little done in 2 days practice, and we're going to try it again today, and if we don't improve, we're going to try it again tomorrow, and if we don't improve, we're going to be in bad shape.
Arkansas State is not one of your better-known football powers. And tonight at 10, we'll try to find something out about the Indians. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
The Braves took over sole possession of first place in the National League West, blasting Giants pitching for 13 hits. Claudell Washington's single broke a 1-1 tie in the third. The Giants went to their ace Al Holland after the Braves loaded the bases. He got Chris Chambliss to pop up, but Terry Harper, with 2 outs, ripped a double into the left field corner. The ball hit the foul line chalk. The bases were cleared for a 5-1 Atlanta lead. Jerry Royster, who went 4 for 5, then singled in Harper to make it 6-1. After the Giants touched starter Rick Mailer for 3 runs, Pascual Perez shut them out, scattering 3 hits over the final 6 2/3 innings. The Braves, winning 8-3, begin a 2-game series in Los Angeles tonight.
We'll go in a 7-Eleven store and knock it over for $100, so that's I know we talked about that earlier. I'm pretty much limited by the Department of Justice to what's in the indictment.
Do you have any idea how much of the $22,000 of the bank's money was converted to his use?
Well, he converted a portion of that money to his own use. The remainder of it was converted to the use of 1 or 2 other.
U.S. Attorney John Bell says a federal grand jury returned 17 indictments against Charles Batchelor, a former vice president of the Union Bank and Trust Company. Batchelor is charged with misapplication of funds and making false statements on loan documents, and is also charged with 1 count of embezzlement.
The indictment alleges that Batchelor falsely stated on various loan documents that certain named individuals were to be the borrowers on certain loans, when in fact Mr. Batchelor knew that the named borrowers were not intended to receive the proceeds of the loans. Mr. Batchelor then had the bank issue checks made payable to the named borrowers and then converted a portion of that money to his own use and to the use of others.
Included in today's indictments are 8 counts of misapplication, which upon conviction carry a sentence of not more than 5 years on each count, and 8 counts of false statements carrying a sentence of not more than 2 years in prison and $5,000 on each of the counts. Batchelor is expected to turn himself in to federal marshals, and no trial date has been set. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
How do you prepare for a team you really don't know anything about? Well, that's the dilemma Alabama faces as they get ready for Arkansas State this Saturday night in Birmingham. About the only thing known about the Indians is they are 2-1. They're coached by Bear Bryant pupil Larry Lacewell, and they run the wishbone offense.
I'm not saying they're a great team. I don't really know that much about them. And I do know a lot about Larry Lacewell. He's a good football man. He has a great football background. And he'll do a lot of, we'll have some surprises. I don't know what they'll be, but we got to work on a lot of if stuff this week.
I don't know that much about Arkansas State. Only thing I know is that they run the wishbone and that they have a great quarterback and they're flat get after you. That's the only thing I know about them.
They're not a big name in football, but you know you gotta watch out about those. They can creep up on you. Those small teams like that.
Is it difficult to get up for a team everybody says you're going to go out and plaster?
Well, not really. After last week, you know, that's what everybody was thinking last week, but we didn't think that way. We prepared for them, and I thought we prepared well. We had a pretty good game plan. We just didn't go through with it too well.
There's nobody looking forward to Penn State, is there?
Not yet, we're not. Saturday night we will be after the game.
This will be the only night game of the year for Alabama. Several thousand tickets still remain for the 7:30 kickoff in Birmingham's Legion Field. Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Yes, sir. I don't want you filming the body, okay? Okay.
Don't put your hand on the camera.
Sir, please, would you?
Ms. Nancy Reagan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for that nice welcome. Before I say anything, I'd like to commend Governor James for calling this conference, first of its kind in Alabama, and I'd also like to compliment Mayor Fulmer for his battle here in Montgomery against the drug epidemic, which, as he says, is nationwide. As I was thinking over what to say to you here today, I remembered that Helen Keller grew up in Alabama. Here was a girl whose young life was a void of silence and darkness, a void most of us can't even comprehend. Yet there are children in this state who are just as removed from the world, except that the void is inside of them. Drugs have killed their hope, their promise, their spirit, their love. Drugs has turned them against their friends, their families, and toward a world of pain and isolation, though they may not realize it at the time. This conference is about preventing that darkness from enveloping any more of our children. You know, I've often thought that the greatest job and the biggest job that we're given is a job that we have no training for at all, and that's the job of being a parent. Owen Spann is a man in San Francisco, lost a son to drugs. And he wrote very recently, when you become a parent, you find yourself in a series of peaks and valleys, highs and lows, moments when you wonder if your children will ever amount to anything, and then other moments of complete pride and joy. And another father once wrote of his son, "No man can possibly know what life means, what the world means, until he has a child and loves it. And then the whole universe changes, and nothing will ever seem exactly as it seemed before." Well, neither does anything seem the same once a child develops a drug problem, because it destroys a family. I believe drug abuse, which crosses all lines, social, economic, political, color, it doesn't make any difference. I've often said it's the most democratic of our problems. We're talking about our next generation and what's going to happen to them. I'm sure that you'll hear other stories of heartbreak at this conference, but in spite of everything, I have to tell you, I do remain optimistic. I'm encouraged because people are finally coming together to face up to the problem of drug abuse. Parents are becoming more involved, more knowledgeable, less embarrassed than they were in the 60s when all of this started. You remember at that time, when it did start, parents were, they thought that their child was the only child on drugs. And they were self-conscious, and they were embarrassed. And they really didn't know much about drugs. And we've come a long way since then, and now parents are becoming, as I say, much more involved and more knowledgeable. And I think the professionals now feel that something can be done also. I'd like to say in closing that I'm told that your state motto is, "We dare defend our rights." Well, what this conference is saying is, we dare to defend our children. And as long as drug abuse is a threat, as long as our kids are endangered, I know that there will be people like you there to defend them. Thank you, Governor, for allowing me to be part of your conference. And thank you, all of you, for all that you're doing, because I'm sure that if we all work together, we can save the next generation and save our children. So thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for honoring.
Friends and supporters throughout Alabama to join Wallace said, former Governor Wallace said. I think that we have reached a point in this state that we cannot continue to pit one group of people against another, whether it be racial or whether it be occupation or whether it be anything. I have heard the word used so many times in this chamber, and I have heard it used in political rhetoric throughout Alabama, referring to special interest groups and referring to groups of big mules and this type. And it is quite disturbing to me how we can, on one hand, talk about big mules or industry is actually what we're talking about when we make that type statement, and then can expect to go outside of Alabama or any other place and recruit industry with one hand, and while we're kicking them at the same time and criticizing is unheard of to me.
Today you have demonstrated again
your call to service for this state. I know the tugs that must be in your heart, and that gives me all the more gratitude for your endorsement and your support. Indeed, putting Alabama first is what we must all do. To you, to your family.
It's sad to see Joe McCorkadale end such a splendid life of public service in such an irresponsible and sordid manner. He has been a lifelong Democrat. He was a beneficiary of the benefits of the Democratic Party, according to him and his father, for more than 50 years. My telephone has been ringing since 5:30 this morning with people who worked in his campaign, and they insist they were sold out. They were misled, they were taken advantage of, that he was deceitful, and he lied to them. We believe that this was an absolute lack of show of gratitude. Actually, it was Shakespeare who said, "Gratitude, ingratitude, thy name is woman." He obviously did not know Joe McCorkadale.
The unusually large number of city police present at the state capitol gave the Speaker's news conference an air of great importance. Inside, the Speaker told a crowd of several hundred something he was sure the Democrats would not like.
I am today endorsing the candidacy of Mayor Emory Farmer for governor for the state of Alabama.
Not only has the Speaker agreed to help me now, but I have asked him, and he has agreed, to lend his help and expertise upon election to help me in the tremendous job of organizing the business of the state of Alabama.
The Speaker drew the line at accepting any cabinet positions in a Falmer administration.
I'm not leaving the Democratic Party. I'm not joining the Republican Party. This is a bipartisan effort, and as I said earlier, I think it means more to me, the future of this state, than party or friendship.
Speaker McCorkadale, referring to Wallace's campaign promises, says it's time the people are told the truth.
How are you going to lower the price of groceries? How are you going to lower the light bill? How are you going to lower the cost of living? How are you going to reduce interest rates? You know, to me, this is false security to a lot of people. Maybe this is politics. This is probably the reason that I'm not the Democratic nominee.
A local Democratic official, Dot Moore, speaking for State Party Chairman Jimmy Knight, blasted McCorkadale's endorsement of Falmer.
My telephone has been ringing since 5:30 this morning with people who worked in his campaign, and they insist they were sold out. They were misled, they were taken advantage of, that he was deceitful, and he lied to them. We believe that this was an absolute lack of show of gratitude.
Mr. Falmer, pleased with the day's events, left the Capitol smiling and waving. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Many department heads are faced with a serious dilemma. Salaries and fringe benefits make up most of their budget, and to trim the overall budget by 15% means dipping in and cutting into those personnel costs.
The unified judicial system has reported what appears to be the largest cuts considered, as many as 350 employees statewide. Court Administrator Alan Tapley says one of the only ways to reduce the number of layoffs is to stop all jury trials, and that would only save 210 of the 350 people who might be laid off. But he says stopping jury trials could overcrowd jails with suspects waiting for trial and lead to lawsuits. A final decision by the court system could come tomorrow. State troopers are also hard hit. Colonel Jerry Shoemaker has sent all of his employees an opportunity to go on a 4.5-day work week in order to avoid the layoff of as many as 185 employees. A decision is expected early next week. State Treasurer Annie Laurie Gunner has already received unanimous support from her employees for a 4.5-day work week. Otherwise, she says she would have been forced to lay off as many as 17 employees. The Conservation Department will be deciding in early October how it will handle the shortfall, which will only affect state parks. One alternative is to lay off state park employees on a seasonal basis. Attorney General Charles Graddick says he's trying to avoid layoffs by drastically cutting other operational costs. But he says if those cuts don't produce enough savings as measured by the first quarter of the fiscal year, he'll consider shortened work weeks, voluntary pay raise rejections, or layoffs. Many other departments are still assessing the impact of proration. One of the most apparent culprits to these layoffs appears to be the 11% salary increase. Since salaries can't be prorated, many employees are being laid off so that those who survive the cuts can receive the salary increase. But employees in other departments, like the state treasurers, have voluntarily shortened their work week to essentially negate the salary increase so everyone can keep their job. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
We're going to have a few differences from the prisons we have now. Number one, we will not have wardens at these facilities. We'll be operating under a management administrator. And then instead of having wardens of these facilities, we will have deputy wardens who will act as unit managers. And then, of course, in turn, they will report directly to Larry Spears, who will be the administrator. Now, we feel like that we're going to be able to save the first year in excess of $100,000.
The premature infant's body was taken to the State Forensic Sciences Lab for an autopsy, and the remains of 78-year-old Willie Daniels have been reburied. Authorities say it all began here in August when the child's mother, Arlene Boyd, gave Welch Funeral Home owner B.W. Fitz the child's body and paid to have it buried.
Well, I thought the baby was going to be buried like he said he was going to do.
How did he say he was going to do it?
He's going to bury it. But he did not say how he was going to do it.
Well, how did you think he was going to do it?
Put it in a box and bury it.
The deceased man's widow, Mrs. Ella Daniels, says she's hurt and outraged over the incident.
It made me feel worse than other than I lost my husband. It's done me worse than my husband. But it make me bury two people.
Did you know that the baby was in the casket during the funeral?
No, I didn't, because it'll come out then.
Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans says the State Funeral Board is interested in the allegations. What are the possibilities of license revocations for the Welch Funeral Home?
I think that's a definite possibility. Obviously, the licensing board does not intend for a little 26-week-old child to be buried in a coffin in that fashion. That's not the way. I don't think licensing board wants a funeral home to do business that way.
The investigation is expected to take 2 days to complete. After that, a funeral board official told me a hearing will be held to determine whether or not Welch Funeral Home will be allowed to continue to operate. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
These students at the Montgomery Area Skills Center received the bad news today in the form of a letter. The students attending this clerical class were receiving $3.35 an hour while they were going to school. That now will be cut to $1 an hour. Executive Director of the Yatauga Elmore Montgomery Manpower Consortium, Patricia McDonald, says the reduction in training allowances stems from anticipated changes in the CETA program, which are awaiting final congressional approval. One of the students, Sherry Kerner, says it looks like she may have to drop out of the training program. Ms. Kerner, who is already working part-time while trying to raise 2 children and go to school, says with the cutback, she can't make ends meet.
I'm tired of welfare. I mean, it's there to help people, and I want to help myself. And that by going to this school, I was able to get some of the skills so I could get out and give me a job, and now all of a sudden, they're taking it all away from us, and we're going to be left with nothing. And the majority of the people that are going here have families they're divorced or they're single with kids, and with $1 an hour, You can't raise a family on $1 an hour pay.
Meanwhile, Mrs. McDonald says she will work with the students to try to find possible solutions to their money problems. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Mr. Billy didn't particularly like being interviewed. He says he never was much for notoriety. As we strolled across the backyard, where family and friends were putting up the birthday party decorations, he told me they call it a birthday. I call it a centennial. You'd think a 100-year-old person would enjoy a big birthday celebration. Not Mr. Billy.
I don't think much of it. The ladies just talked me into that. I don't care for that. I would enjoy it all right if it was just social little out to the country club or something like that. We're going to have something. But with all this elaboration, have people come from all the United States, that's bad business.
Mr. Billy doesn't look like he's 100 years old. He says he doesn't feel like it either. More like 60, he says. Mr. Billy doesn't consider himself a ladies' man, although he says he is fond of the ladies, especially the cute 2- and 3-year-olds. He likes to dance, goes to church every Sunday, and still drives his old Plymouth Deluxe, which he bought in 1948. Mr. Billy doesn't really have a philosophy of life, but he says the key to living a long life is a few do's and don'ts.
Stop drinking liquor. You know, liquor and that rich food don't mix together, you know. 2 o'clock in the morning getting up, I got tired of that, you know, so I cut out the liquor and that don't have to have any more tums.
Mr. Billy has some thoughts about politics. That story tonight at 10. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Greenville. Mr. Billy is probably glad the birthday party is over, although I'm sure he enjoyed the many family members and friends who gathered for what he calls the centennial. Mr. Billy says he'd prefer socializing at the local country club. Mr. Billy didn't want to talk about all his 100 years. In fact, he was glad when the interview was over and said politely during the interview, "Don't you think that's enough?" "No," I said. I wanted to ask him about the upcoming state election, and he wanted to tell me.
You know, I didn't tell you about, I didn't care for George Wallace. And this last time, my Lord, no, I couldn't vote because I'm going to vote for this young man up here that runs the mayor's office up here in Montgomery.
Mr. Billy says his favorite president was Teddy Roosevelt. He says Teddy used a big stick and didn't take all the politics like today. Mr. Billy says Teddy Roosevelt was the ideal president.
Well, don't you reckon that's enough?
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Greenville.
I don't care for all this here.
The hardest hit departments are those which receive all of their money from the general fund budget. There are some departments which receive other revenues and can survive the 15% proration without severe cuts. The unified judicial system is one of the departments hardest hit. As many as 350 employees may be laid off. That number might be reduced to 140, but only if all jury trials in the state are halted, and officials say that could have serious legal effects. State troopers may lose as many as 185 workers to layoffs unless the department workers agree to shorten their work week, and that requires unanimous support from the employees. State Treasurer Annie Laurie Gunner says her employees have already agreed to a shorter work week so layoffs can be avoided. Attorney General Charles Graddick says he's asking his workers to drastically cut down on expenses. He says if those cuts can't produce the needed savings, he'll consider shorter work weeks or layoffs by early 1983. One irony mentioned by several department heads is the 11% pay raise that goes into effect. They say in order for some employees to receive the increase, others are being laid off, or all employees are essentially having to voluntarily forego the raise so everyone in the department can keep their jobs. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Pay the $1 an hour and pay the dependents. 10 cents if we get the travel allowance.
that the compromise bill would not do what it's done.
None of us in here, the majority in this class, are divorced.
Well, I get paid to come to the school to learn a trade so that I can support my kids, and I'm the sole supporter of my family, which I have 2 children. And with this cutback, it means that I'm going to have to get out, find me a full-time job, and the skills that I have started to learn here will be useless to me because I don't really have enough of them yet to be able to find me a good job. And I can't go to school all day long and work every night to 12 and 1 o'clock and then go home and get enough rest to come back to school and start over again. You can't just continue like that. And I also would like to see my kids some. And as it is, I don't see them too much.
It's been 8 long years since the Lanier Poets have beaten Jeff Davis in high school football. This year, they're hoping things will be different.
You know, like last year, I didn't get to play in the game. And, you know, I saw them lose it was in the last quarter that they lost. And, you know, this year I think we're going to get after them, try to put it on them.
We really fired up because, you know, we've been wanting to whoop them ever since we was in junior high, you know. Most all of us that weren't going to JD wanted to whoop them, you know.
I thought we played better last week than we've played, but you can't live on what you did last week. We got to improve a lot this week if we stand a chance, because Jeff Davis is the best team I've seen in a long time.
Here at Jeff Davis, the Vols are off to a great start, 4-0 on the year, ranked #1 in the state. But that doesn't mean they take Lanier for granted. Well, Coach, by the look at your T-shirt, it's obviously Jeff Davis Lanier week is a big week.
Rick, any time that Lanier and Jeff Davis get together, it's a big week. I think maybe this year a little bit more so. Both of us have good football teams. Both of us should be undefeated. Last year's ball game was such a close ball game where we won in the last 4 minutes. I think Lanier's probably got a little something special for us this year.
Of course, last year we came back at the very end of the game and scored a couple touchdowns and won it. But you know, that was a very physical ball game, and I think it's be about the same way this year.
It's like a motivation game. They be always up to the gym at Bellingraph. We be boasting, saying who got the best team in this, and they always on my back. So I always have, go out and show my stuff. I don't talk too much, but when we get on the field Friday night, it'll tell.
Well, the talking's over. It's now time to start playing. Lanier and JD, what a game it should be. Kickoff here at Crampton Bowl Friday night, 7:30. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. At Jeff Davis, the Vols are looking very good. They're off to a 4-0 start, and they've landed the top ranking among the state's 4A schools. Coach Charles Lee thought before the season began that his Vols were too inexperienced to be considered among the state's elite. But after a couple of impressive wins, he may be changing his tune.
We're playing better. I think we've gotten better each week. Lee made some mistakes last week against us. They didn't play as well maybe as they would like to have, but I think we're getting better.
What about Lanier? What's impressive?
Everything. They've got a great offensive line. They've got a lot of people coming back. The backs executing extremely well. We thought early in the year that their defense was the thing that was carrying them. We go out to the bowl last Thursday night, and they scored 41 points against Prattville. I can see no weaknesses in Lanier's team.
Lanier began the season ranked in the top 10, but a loss to defending state 4A champ Northview knocked the Poets out. But they appear to be on the rebound after last Friday's 41-6 thrashing of Prattville. Coach Charles Sykes knows that a win over JD could be all his team needs to reach their potential.
I think the momentum's pretty high, but every week it's like this for us. Like we play Jeff Davis this week, next week Enterprise, who's undefeated. Next week we play Auburn, who's lost one, so we can't have to let down.
How big a game is it?
It's really important for, have bragging rights in the city, but I don't think it's the most important game we play.
A big crowd will be expected at Crampton Bowl tomorrow night. Kickoff for JD and Lanier is 7:30.
The Dodgers' fading offense got going in the first inning. Pedro Guerrero singled to left field to score Rick Monday and a 1-0 lead. In the Braves' fourth inning with 2 men out, Terry Harper hit his first home run of the year. It came off Fernando Valenzuela to tie the game at 1. Then Dodger killer Glenn Hubbard doubled to right field off Guerrero's glove to score Jerry Royster. Braves led it 2-1. In the 7th inning, the Dodgers tied it up. Steve Sachs singled to center field. That brought home Bill Russell, and that's the way the game stood until the 12th, when Atlanta scored twice. Harper blooped a Terry Forster pitch into center field in front of Ron Renicky. Ramirez scored 3-2 Braves. Royster added some pennant insurance. He singled to right field. Brett Butler scored, and it was 4-2 in favor of Atlanta. The Dodgers got one back in the bottom of the 12th, but the Braves won it 4-3. Atlanta leads Los Angeles and San Francisco by 2 games with 4 to play.
Thank you very much for letting us be a
so
part
much.
of your fine
We're
institute.
delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
Let me say on behalf of Tuskegee Institute,
Anything I cannot provide you this morning, I count today, as a matter of fact, October appreciation for the stripes that are now on my back, having put this you doing those same kinds of things. So I know there's an appreciation for what has to happen to the world at large in terms of these resources, a safe, sane, environmentally comfortable, our natural environment. Thus, these programs that will be substantially benefited by the kind of undertaking that Dr. Tolbert has before him, that will be placed here at Tuskegee Institute.
this is one of the areas of frontier activity, and it's very important that we finally have one black college in the country that will have a program in aeronautical engineering, in aerospace science.
Of the area. And frankly, what the President proposed on September 1st is aimed...
With aid, he received the meritorious service citation with the department...
are far greater than just that. Setting aside the... we must keep our resolve to do whatever is necessary, to do whatever is possible, to move the peace process forward. And this is the kind of role that our government will attempt to carry out, to be an honest broker in a very difficult situation, to be a negotiator, to treat all of the parties even-handedly, and at the same time live up to our commitment, which we made back in 1948, that we would see the state of Israel have its right to exist within secure and defensible borders preserved.
The tax bill was passed during the 1982 regular session of the Alabama legislature to standardize the total of county and city beer taxes at $1.17 per case. Bill Hallam of the Alabama Wine and Beer Wholesalers Association says his organization's been trying to get a levelized beer tax for 10 years.
Well, the advantage, of course, is that you don't have people buying in one place, in a place other than where they live. So you have people who patronize the local merchants because the price of beer is essentially the same there as it would be any place else they could go within the state.
Mr. Hallam says he's surprised the judge struck down the law. The ruling is the result of a court challenge brought by city officials in Muscle Shoals who claimed the new law would cost the city $300,000 a year in tax revenue. Tuscumbia attorney Stan Muncie, who represents Colbert County probate judge William Crossland, says he's already filed notice of appeal with the state Supreme Court. And Muncie says next week he'll ask the High Court to allow the collection of the taxes under the new schedule until that appeal is heard. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Supreme Court.
Should we have to delay criminal and civil jury trials for any length of period, or they continually are interrupted throughout this fiscal year of operations, I think we would begin to see problems in terms of, especially in the delay of the criminal trial area. That they're facing. Right now, there's not a great deal of encouragement because of severe.
The cutback in funds has caused the cancellation of all jury trials in courts across the state beginning October 8th, and there won't be any more jury trials until the state's financial situation improves.
The state court system operates on a budget of $49 million annually, and spokesman Alan Tapley says the cancellation of the jury trials, which make up only about 3% of all trials, is going to save them less than 5% of their monthly budget.
They average, have in the past year, $200,000 in cost per month. That's for juror and witness and grand juror cost.
In addition, employees are going to have to be laid off.
We care about people and their employment. We must operate the system, and we want to protect people to the extent we can. A number could range anywhere from, depending on the time we take action, of 150 to perhaps as high as 300 people.
And Mr. Tapley is concerned over how delaying jury trials will affect the quality of justice in the state.
Should we have to delay criminal and civil jury trials for any length of period, or they continually are interrupted throughout this fiscal year of operations, I think we would begin to see problems in terms of, especially in the delay of the criminal trial area.
The State Administrative Office of Court says it's going to review its financial situation on a day-to-day basis to make its decision on when the jury trials will resume. I'm Bob Howell, WSFA TV News.
Dave's okay. He had some kind of a virus, but he's better now, and I think he'll be able to play.
Well, we read a couple of things about maybe he was in the doghouse. Anything to that?
Oh, no, I don't know where all that got started. You're in the news media. You know how that goes. So one statement and everything builds somebody build a mountain out of a molehill.
Any way you can see 1,000 yards of offense in this game like there was last week?
No, I don't think so. Unless Auburn has 800 of them, I don't think so. We feel that Auburn is a very sound football team. They have a very good defense, and I think they've made tremendous progress on offense from a year ago. And so we're really concerned about our ability to stop them.
How about two big crowds this far from home 2 weeks in succession? Is that a problem?
Well, it depends on the nature of the crowd, and that wasn't a bad crowd last week. They said a few bad things to us coming off the field, but when you lose, that happens. And I've heard about how well-mannered people are down here at Auburn. They wouldn't be that way. And, we were playing at over Legion Field in Birmingham, and those Alabama fans, they were a little rough on us. Now, you guys wouldn't be that way, would you?
No way, Coach.
After a disappointing 1-2 start, a win over powerful Tennessee State would be all Alabama State needed to get their season back on the right track. Of course, that's easier said than done. The Tigers come to town sporting a 2-0-1 record and #2 ranking according to the Sheridan Network Black College poll. So the task facing the Hornets is a monumental one. Coach George James isn't backing down. In fact, he's quite confident.
Well, I'm not too disappointed. I think we made some mistakes in the first two games, but after Saturday, we'll be 2-2, 500 ball.
Sounds like a prediction maybe, huh?
Well, it is a prediction. I tell you, you see the attitude of the players out here today, that we ready. We're going to be playing our hearts out.
Tennessee State, very tough football team, ranked #2 Sheridan.
Tough football player and players, and I like to play those kind. If we can win from those folks, we can get up in the top 10, maybe top 15, 20 something.
What kind of game are you expecting?
I think it's going to be an offensive game. They can score on any parts of the field, but we're going to be able to score on any parts, I hope, that when it comes Saturday. So I'm all excited.
A good crowd is expected at Crampton Bowl for Alabama State and Tennessee State. Kickoff tomorrow is 1:30. Rick Bonds, WSFA TV Sports.
And whatever I had before the season started, I never lost, definition.
I've heard about how well-mannered people are down here at Auburn. They wouldn't be that way. And, we were playing at over Legion Field in Birmingham, and those Alabama fans, they were a little rough on us. Now, you guys wouldn't be that way, would you?
No way,
okay.
Coach.
At least 8 people in Alabama say they've taken extra-strength Tylenol capsules that came from the same batch, suspected in the deaths of 6 people in the Chicago area who died of cyanide poisoning. Dr. John Fisher with the Poison Control Center in Tuscaloosa says he's received hundreds of calls from people who are worried. He says 8 of the calls came from people who took capsules out of bottles with the same code number as those laced with cyanide in Chicago. But so far, there have been no confirmed reports of contaminated capsules in the state. Dr. Fisher says those 8 Birmingham people who took the capsules haven't experienced any adverse symptoms. To play it safe, Johnson & Johnson has ordered the recall of both batches of Tylenol. And until tests are completed, consumers are urged not to take any of the capsules. The code numbers are on the side of the bottle. Those to look for are MC2880 and MD1910. For more information, you can call the Poison Control Center in Tuscaloosa, 1-800-462-0800. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Miss Mandrell arrived in Montgomery shortly before 3 o'clock with a full weekend ahead of her. A concert tomorrow night, a golf tournament Sunday, all for her special cause, the Alabama Sheriff's Boys and Girls Ranches. In the last 4 years, Miss Mandrell has raised more than $500,000 for the ranches. This year's benefit got off to a good start. Ms. Mandrell accepted 2 checks for a total of $6,000. One from Ernest Tucker of Montgomery and one from Bobby Quinn, the director of NBC's Tonight Show. She believes the Boys and Girls Ranches provide good homes for children who are abused, neglected, or abandoned.
And most importantly, they are loved, and they are brought up in an environment where they know that they're cared about very deeply. And
Ms. Mandrell says many of the ranch children will be her honored guests tomorrow night when she performs with Tony Orlando at the Montgomery Civic Center. The benefit weekend kicks off tomorrow with an 8 a.m. road race, followed by a 10 a.m. tennis tournament at the Arrowhead Country Club and a 2 p.m. fashion show at the Civic Center. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How's it going? We're talking, when we talk about our ranches, these children have the same environment. I mean, they have a mom and dad, like my kids. They have a mom and dad that go to public school. They have an opportunity to really learn useful and productive things. They help. They grow their own gardens. They learn how to do that. They have horses.
Well, it hasn't, honey. It's been fine.
Hi. How are you, little folks? And you look so
Lord, help me today. Show me the way. What may I do?
Plenty of each as people turned out for the rally received candidates, soft drink, movie, and a surprise phone message. The phone call came from President Reagan shortly after 7:15 tonight. The president told the crowd that Congressman Dickinson has long been a supporter of his, and he wanted to lend his support tonight to make sure Dickinson was reelected. The president said that he inherited a bad economic situation, and he's striving to make things better.
Now, I know also the concern that you people there have for the farming interests in your district. And I can tell you that Bill and I have talked of those because we both know that no one in this country of ours has been hurt worse by the cost-price squeeze than the American farmer.
Prior to the rally at the Houston County Farm Center, Congressman Dickinson held a joint news conference with Interior Secretary James Watt, one of the more
4%.
controversial members of the Reagan
that's
administration.
Unemployment
Watt
is
said he
tied
too wants to support
directly to
Dickinson's
inflation,
campaign
and it comes,
and issued a warning to reporters that if
I thought
Dickinson's
this was
opponent, Billy Joe
blatantly
Camp, is elected, it will only lend more support to the Democratic congressional leadership, who Watt says has left this country in very bad shape.
Up there in Washington
Don Phelps, WSFA TV News, in Dothan.
Policies they have taken with regard to the land
of the area. And frankly, what the president proposed on September 1st. So as we do our thinking about the Middle East, let's not forget that our concerns go far beyond the Arab-Israeli conflict. But let's also remember that the Arab-Israeli conflict is central to establishing, if not peace, certainly stability in the Middle East. There will not be stability and certainly will not be peace in the Middle East until such time as there is resolution of that conflict in which all of the parties are reasonably satisfied. I say reasonably satisfied because I doubt that we find any conflict situation which can be resolved in which all parties will be totally satisfied.
Consumers are urged not to take any of the extra-strength Tylenol capsules, and store owners are pulling the Tylenol boxes off the shelves until tests can be completed. The code number is on the side of the label. Those found laced with cyanide in Chicago have the numbers MC2880 and MD1910. 6 deaths are blamed on those contaminated capsules. If you have a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol capsules with one of those numbers, take it back to the store where you bought it or send it back to the manufacturer. Officials at the Poison Control Center in Tuscaloosa say they've received hundreds of calls from people worried about taking the pain relievers. But so far, none of those who took capsules from the contaminated bottles in Alabama has shown any adverse effects. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The first half was all linear. The Poets took the opening kickoff and drove it 80 yards to pay dirt. Arthur Stokes on this twisting rain scored from the 6-7-0 linear. Next possession, Poets drive it 56 yards. Stokes again gets the call, skipping it over from the 4. Poets led it 14-0 at halftime. But J.D. roared back at intermission. A low snap allowed the Vols to pour through and block this punt deep in the near territory. Jeff Davis in business at the 3. 2 plays later, Mike Turk sneaks it in to cut it to 14-7. Fourth quarter now, Vols take it 78 yards. Fritz Artis sneaking it over from the 1. A try for 2 failed. 14-13 Lanier, 4:33 left in the game. JD then gets the break they need. Marvin Humphreys picks off this Stan Kirkland pass at the Lanier 21. 3 plays later, Pop Coley bowls it in from the 6. A try for 2 again fails, 19-14 JD. The ball stop a late Lanier drive when Humphreys picks off this pass deep in Jeff Davis territory. A hard-fought win. Top-ranked JD remains unbeaten down in Lanier, 19-14.
We can't live in the future, we can't live in the past.
The speech I just made and was making was a rehearsal. I just want all those good people out there to know, those people in Dothan, that how much I've depended on you as a supporter of what we're trying to do in our administration. And I think all of you there in Dothan should know that as a ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, believe me, I have had the greatest of help and advice from your Congressman, Bill Dickinson, on the rebuilding of our national defenses, which has been allowed to deteriorate so badly.
Being here, and you espouse the cause of individuality and free enterprise better than most that I know in. Because we didn't pass the authorization bill necessary. This is rather informal. I'll take it.
Congressman Dickinson's opponent would be supporting, if he were to accidentally win, and support a Tip O'Neill and those kind of people that up there in Washington have caused the price of energy to go up because of the policies they have taken with regard to the lands that belong to all of the people of Alabama, as well as Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, and the like. We have enough energy to meet our needs for thousands of years if we'll allow those lands to be managed and taken care of with good stewardship concepts. But the Tip O'Neills of Washington, D.C., that the congressman's opponent would be voting to be Speaker of the House, won't bring about the right stewardship concepts. Look what they brought to us.
This is how astronauts Mattingly and Hartsfield returned to Earth July 4th at the end of the 4th test mission of the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Our whole objective was economics. It was to build something which this country could afford to fly, not because we just like going into space, but because it makes economic sense for us to do that.
And that's how the astronauts explained the shuttle program as they returned to their alma mater, Auburn University, today.
I think in my personal contacts that people readily accept what we're doing as being important for the country.
Both astronauts stressed that the Columbia is different from all earlier spacecrafts, and they say as space technology grows and improves, it can help change the way the world views space.
And what we're talking to you about this morning is getting out of the mode where the government has to fund everything. We're talking about making this thing pay for itself. The number of dollars that it takes to invest to make this program go isn't the important thing. It's the return on that investment that counts.
What we do in space over the next 15 to 20 years is going to shape our destiny. And right now, I'm not sure we're smart enough to know what all those things are going to be.
But the day was not all work for the astronauts. Thousands of fans greeted them at halftime during today's Auburn-Nebraska football game, and the astronauts brought a gift. They returned to the university 2 Auburn football jerseys they carried with them in the Columbia. The astronauts praised the university's tradition in the space program, saying they've only reached one milestone on a long, exciting path. Reporting from Auburn University, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Miss Mandrell's schedule this weekend would be enough to slow down the best racehorse. By the time her road crew was setting the stage for her concert with Tony Orlando, she had already given her best smile to hundreds of people at the Arrowhead Country Club and a fashion show downtown. But Miss Mandrell has a mission to raise money for about 200 boys and girls who found homes at the Alabama Sheriff's ranches.
My problem and where my heart aches is that we unfortunately have to turn down, I forget, I think it averages something like 1 or 2 a day. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough room to accommodate all the children that have a need.
Ms.
So
Mandrell
that's
worried
why all
about
the
this year's
effort,
benefit,
plus the
aware
fact
that
to
people
keep,
might not be able to give as much as
contributing
usual
so we
because
can
of the
keep
troubled
everything
economy.
going. Generalize.
Then she thinks about the ranch children and says God will take care of the rest.
The children are each one an entirely different story. They are abused or abandoned or orphaned, or for some reason there's been a situation come up where they need a home. But they're all very, very different cases.
And you give them that home?
Well, I don't. I simply come down and try to help raise money.
But why do you do it? Some would think that, and I would think, that your gifts of music are enough to return to the world.
My music is a gift God gave to me. It's my pleasure to do that. I'm just a person like everybody else. I think we all do what we can do.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Dig down and pull out $2. And by program, if that's what they can do, then they're doing every bit as much as I'm doing. You know, it's the person that gives and does what they can. Thank you.
Late in the first quarter, Tennessee State got their offense on track, driving 83 yards for a score. Quarterback Kenneth Biggles connects here with Larry Kimbrough, who breaks a tackle, gets a good block, and rambles 32 yards for a touchdown. 1:37 left in the first, 7-0 Tigers. On the next possession, Walter Shelley has the ball stripped from him as he goes through the line, giving it to TSU deep in Hornet territory at the 21. Biggles then goes to work. Here he hits Kenneth Gardner for an 8-yard touchdown pass. Early in the second, 14-0 Tennessee State. Midway through the second, the Tigers drive it 68 yards for their third touchdown. Biggles to tight end Barry Collins here gains 29 to the ASU 24. First and goal now inside the 10. Kimbrough makes a nice run, bulling it down inside the 1. The next play, the big fullback takes it in. 6:08 left in the half. It's 21-0 Tennessee State. That's where it stood at halftime. The Tigers added 3 more scores in the second half. They rolled to an easy 42-0 win over Bama State.